My name is Angelica, and at 29 years old, I sat alone at my MBA graduation, staring at the cruel text from my father. Don't expect help. You're on your own. The words stung even though I should have expected nothing less. As tears threatened, my phone rang again. It was Thomas, my CFO. His news would transform my day of quiet achievement into a moment of sweet vindication that no one, especially my father, could ignore. While I tell you how my graduation day turned into the most satisfying moment of my life, let me know where you're watching from and hit subscribe if you've ever had to prove someone wrong. Growing up in Boston, within the confines of a wealthy but emotionally frigid family, was like living in a beautiful museum where I never quite belonged. Our sprawling colonial home in Beacon Hill housed all the trappings of success but lacked the warmth of genuine connection. My father Richard built his import business from the ground up, a fact he reminded us of daily. With his steel gray hair always perfectly combed and his custom suits without a wrinkle, he embodied old money even though he had earned every penny himself. Angelica, women don't belong in boardrooms, he would say, whenever I expressed interest in business. They belong beside successful men, not competing with them. This wasn't just an occasional comment, but his unwavering philosophy. My mother Eleanor, a former debutante with a literature degree she never used, floated through our lives like a pleasant ghost. She smiled at appropriate times, hosted flawless dinner parties, and never ever contradicted my father. When he dismissed my ambitions, she would simply squeeze my hand under the table, her silence both comforting and complicit. Then there were my brothers. James, 2 years older, received full ride to Wharton courtesy of our parents, plus a luxury apartment and spending allowance that exceeded most starting salaries. Michael, 4 years, my senior, got the same treatment at Harvard Business School, along with connections that landed him a vice presidency before he turned 30. Both were being groomed for leadership in the family business or beyond, while I was subtly but consistently steered toward more suitable pursuits. Your brothers need to establish themselves in the world, my father explained when I questioned the disparity. You need to find a good husband. Different priorities require different investments. My fascination with technology began early. At 12, I disassembled and rebuilt our family computer when it malfunctioned, saving my father hundreds in repair costs. He called it fiddling. When I won the state science fair at 14 with a primitive health monitoring app, he called it a cute hobby. By 16, I was coding sophisticated programs and selling simple websites to local businesses. A nice way to earn pocket money until college, he remarked. High school became a battleground where each achievement became another opportunity to seek the approval that never came. National Merit Scholar, valedictorian. President of both the Computer Club and Business Association. Each accomplishment met with the same lukewarm response. That's nice, dear, but don't let it distract you from meeting the right people. When acceptance letters arrived from colleges, I placed them all on the dining table one Sunday dinner. Dartmouth, MIT. Stanford, all offering partial scholarships for computer science. I needed his financial support for the remainder. Computer science. My father chuckled, setting down his wine glass. Absolutely not. If you want our support, you'll study something appropriate at Wellesley. Art history, perhaps. Or English literature, like your mother. But I want to build things, create technology, I argued. I have the grades, the test scores. These are top programs. Then you'll need top dollars, won't you? He replied coolly. And those won't be coming from me for, what did you call it, computer science? That night marked my first major step away from family expectations. I accepted MIT's offer, determined to find a way to make it work without their support. I took out loans, found 3 part-time jobs, applied for every scholarship available, and lived on ramen and determination. Those 4 years taught me more than coding. They taught me resilience. Working as a library assistant from 5 to 8 in the morning, attending classes until 3, waitressing until closing, then studying until my eyes burned. Holidays meant picking up extra shifts while my classmates flew home to celebrate. Each semester was a financial tightrope walk, each unexpected expense a potential catastrophe. I graduated at the top of my class. My family attended the ceremony, my father's expression, a mixture of surprise and reluctant pride. Well, he said afterward, at least you stuck with it. Though God knows what you'll do with such an impractical degree. That evening, as we sat in an expensive restaurant he had chosen, he laid out what he saw as my options. The Henderson boy is taking over his father's firm. Single good family. Or there's William Schaefer, just made partner at Goldman. Either would be suitable matches. Your mother can arrange introductions. I've already accepted a job at Horizon Tech, I replied. Entry-level software development. I start next month. The silence that followed set the pattern for years to come. My choices were tolerated but never endorsed my independence, viewed as a temporary phase before I would inevitably surrender to his vision of my future. The family support that my brothers took for granted was consistently withheld from me. Christmas gifts for them were business connections and investment opportunities. Mine were jewelry and designer clothes items to make me more attractive in a world where my father believed my only real currency was appearance. These early years established the emotional terrain I would navigate the constant seeking of validation from a man incapable of giving it the slow realization that my worth in his eyes was fundamentally different from my brother's, and the growing determination to succeed, not just despite his lack of support, but because of it. Horizon Tech should have been my big break, but the reality proved different. Despite my qualifications, I found myself in an entry-level position debugging code written by less capable male colleagues with prestigious MBAs. My degrees and perfect GPA couldn't override the subtle biases in the industry. I watched less qualified colleagues get promoted, while I remained stuck, my ideas overlooked in meetings, my suggestions attributed to others when they proved valuable. 6 months in, feeling increasingly invisible, I met Diana Reynolds. At 54, she was a rare female executive in the tech world, having fought her way to Chief Innovation Officer through decades of proving herself twice as capable as her male counterparts. She found me working alone in the office at 9:30 on a Friday night, the only one still there. Either you're gunning for my job, or you're trying to compensate for something, she said, leaning against my cubicle. I looked up, startled. Just trying to be taken seriously. She nodded. How's that working out for you? It's not. Diana laughed, a rich, genuine sound. Come on, I'm buying you a drink. That night changed everything. Over whiskey sours at a quiet bar, Diana became the mentor I had always craved. She didn't offer pity or easy solutions, but something far more valuable: recognition. You're the real deal, she told me. But talent isn't enough. This industry will eat you alive if you let it. Under Diana's guidance, I began to navigate the corporate landscape more effectively. I learned when to speak up and when to build alliances, when to take credit and when to share it. Slowly, my position improved, but something else was happening too. Through my work in medical software, I began to see a massive gap in the market. The idea came while developing a small module for patient tracking. What if healthcare technology could do more than track? What if it could predict, prevent, and personalize? I envisioned a platform that would revolutionize patient care through predictive analytics, one that would make healthcare proactive rather than reactive. The concept consumed me. I worked my day job and developed my idea nights and weekends, building prototypes, researching the market, creating business plans. After 18 months, I knew it was time to make the leap. You're out of your mind, my father said when I mentioned quitting my job to launch a startup. We were at another family dinner, one of the quarterly obligations I still maintained. The tech bubble has burst before and will burst again. Keep your stable job. It's not just another app, Dad. It's a healthcare revolution. With a small investment, I could get it off the ground. I've already developed the core algorithms. Investment. He laughed, looking to my brothers, who joined his amusement. You want me to fund this pipe dream? I have a business plan, market research, even interest from potential clients. I just need startup capital. Angelica, he sighed. Come back when you've grown up and realized business isn't for little girls. Your brothers have real ventures that need capital, not some. What did you call it? Healthcare revolution? I left that dinner with burning cheeks and an iron resolve. If family wouldn't be my seed investors, I would find another way. Diana was the first to believe in me financially. She invested $50,000, enough to rent a tiny office and survive for 3 months. This isn't charity, she insisted. This is the best investment opportunity I've seen in a decade. Those early startup days were both exhilarating and terrifying. I assembled a small team who believed in the vision enough to accept minimal salaries and equity instead. Our office was a converted storage space above a deli. The constant smell of pastrami permeated our clothes, and the irregular heating meant coating in gloves during winter months. For 6 months, I lived on protein bars and catnaps. My apartment went unused except for quick showers as I worked around the clock, sleeping under my desk when exhaustion won out. Every dollar went to development or payroll. Every setback felt potentially fatal. The technical challenges were immense. Our system needed to integrate with existing hospital infrastructure while processing vast amounts of patient data through our proprietary algorithms. The first 3 versions failed spectacularly, crashing during demos or producing nonsensical results. "Maybe your father was right," my lead developer said after a particularly disastrous pitch meeting. "Maybe we're reaching too far." The words stung more because part of me feared the same. What if I was just a naive dreamer? What if this whole venture was just an elaborate attempt to prove my father wrong rather than a viable business? Then came our breakthrough. Version 4 successfully predicted patient complications in our test dataset with 87% accuracy, far exceeding industry standards. A small local hospital agreed to a pilot program. The results exceeded even our optimistic projections, identifying at-risk patients days before traditional methods, saving both money and lives. Word spread. Medical journals requested interviews. Other hospitals expressed interest. We secured a small round of funding from angel investors impressed by the early results. For the first time, we could pay ourselves living wages and hire additional staff. My family remained unimpressed. Hospitals are notoriously slow adopters, my father pointed out at Christmas, and the regulatory hurdles will probably shut you down before you turn a profit. He was partially right about the challenges, but completely wrong about our resilience. We navigated the complex healthcare regulations by bringing regulatory experts onto our advisory board. We adapted our technology to work within existing hospital systems rather than requiring expensive overhauls. 18 months after launch, we were in 12 hospitals with a growing waitlist. Our team had expanded to 28 people working from actual offices with functioning heat and no pastrami fumes. We were still far from profitable, but the vision was proving itself daily. Through it all, the tension with my family intensified. Each small success seemed to deepen my father's skepticism rather than alleviate it. My brothers, taking their cue from him, oscillated between dismissing my company as a cute hobby and expressing concern about my unhealthy work habits. "You know," James said during a rare sibling lunch, "there's still time to sell this thing to a bigger company and come work for Dad." He'd never admit it, but he's impressed you've lasted this long. "I don't want to work for Dad," I replied, "and I don't want to sell. I want to change healthcare." He shook his head, unable to comprehend ambition that wasn't tied to family approval. "Suit yourself. Just don't come crying when it all falls apart." I didn't tell him about the acquisition offers we'd already turned down or the major venture capital firms beginning to circle. Some victories were sweeter, kept private, saved for the perfect moment of revelation. 3 years into building my company, I made a decision that surprised even my closest colleagues. I applied to MBA programs. Not because I doubted my abilities, but because I recognized that to truly scale Health Predict, as we'd named our platform, I needed a stronger foundation in business strategy, and most crucially, access to a network of potential investors and partners. "Are you insane, my CTO?" Lucy asked when I told her. "You already work 20 hours a day. When exactly will you attend classes?" She had a point, but I'd calculated the risk. A top-tier MBA program would accelerate our growth in ways that years of trial and error couldn't match. The connections alone would be worth the investment of time and money. When acceptance letters arrived from Wharton, Harvard, and Stanford, I chose Harvard primarily for its healthcare innovation focus. The part-time executive program would allow me to continue running Health Predict while gaining the knowledge we needed to scale. I announced my acceptance at our quarterly family dinner foolishly, hoping for approval at last. My father set down his fork and stared at me as if I'd announced plans to join the circus. "An MBA now isn't your little company struggling enough without you dividing your attention." "We're not struggling, Dad. We're in 20 hospitals now with proven outcomes. An MBA will help us expand faster." Throwing good money after bad, he muttered. First the impractical tech degree, now this. At least your brothers had the sense to get proper business education before starting ventures. My mother, who had remained characteristically quiet, surprised everyone by speaking up. I think it's wonderful, Angelica. Harvard is a remarkable achievement. My father's glance silenced her immediately, but after dinner she found me alone in the kitchen. With tears in her eyes, she hugged me quickly. I'm so proud of you. I always have been. Before I could respond, she hurried away, returning to her role as my father's silent supporter. My brothers split in their reactions. Michael, always our father's echo, dismissed the MBA as too little too late. But James expressed genuine support, even offering to review my business plan with fresh eyes. Dad's from a different era, he said during a private conversation. He doesn't understand what you're building. Will he ever? I asked. James shrugged. Maybe when you sell for $1 billion. The truth was, my father's dismissal of my MBA acceptance was merely the catalyst for the confrontation that had been brewing for years. 2 weeks later, at a family foundation meeting where my brothers presented investment opportunities that received immediate approval and funding, I again raised the possibility of family investment in Health Predict. We're seeking our Series B funding, I explained, sharing the impressive metrics from our hospital implementations. The return potential is significant, and you'd be getting in at a crucial growth stage. My father listened impassively, then delivered the blow that would sever what little connection remained between us. Angelica, this fantasy has gone far enough. Your brothers present real businesses with realistic projections. You've been playing entrepreneur for 3 years now. It's time to either succeed on your own or admit I was right. No more discussions, no more pitches, no more fantasy funding rounds. The room fell silent. Even my brothers looked uncomfortable. 3 years of sacrificing everything, I said quietly. 3 years of proving this concept works, of saving actual lives with our technology. And you still see it as a fantasy? I see a stubborn girl who can't admit she's out of her depth. I stood gathering my presentation materials with shaking hands. Then I guess I'll just have to prove you wrong. Again. That was the last real conversation we had for nearly 2 years. I stopped attending family dinners, sent polite regrets to holiday gatherings, and channeled every ounce of hurt and anger into 2 parallel tracks: excelling at Harvard and growing Health Predict. The MBA program was as grueling as expected. I attended classes 2 weekends a month, completed assignments during midnight hours, and constantly toggled between student and CEO mindsets. What I hadn't anticipated was how immediately valuable the network would prove. During a healthcare innovation seminar, I met Raj Patel, a partner at Elevation Ventures, who specialized in medical technology investments. After hearing my informal pitch over coffee, he requested a proper meeting with his entire team. 2 weeks later, we secured a $12 million investment at a valuation that exceeded my most optimistic projections. The funding allowed us to expand our engineering team, improve our algorithms, and most importantly, begin clinical trials that would provide the hard data needed for widespread adoption. Simultaneously, Harvard connected me with hospital administrators, insurance executives, and regulatory experts who became advisors, clients, and champions of our technology. Each connection built upon the last, creating momentum that began to feel unstoppable. By the middle of my second semester, Health Predict had expanded to 43 hospitals across 12 states. Our clinical trials showed results that exceeded even our internal projections. 26% reduction in preventable readmissions, 31% improvement in early intervention, outcomes and cost savings, averaging $4 million per hospital annually. These results attracted attention from major venture capital firms. During finals week of my second semester, while running on caffeine and determination, I negotiated our Series C funding, $75 million at a valuation of $400 million. The business press began to take notice. Healthcare's next unicorn read one headline. The algorithm that's saving lives and money claimed another. I saved these articles but never sent them to my family. Some part of me was saving every victory, large and small, for one perfect moment of vindication. Throughout this period, my relationship with my family existed mainly through brief text exchanges with my mother and occasional lunches with James. My father made no attempts at reconciliation, and I had stopped expecting any. The silence between us had calcified into something that felt permanent. During one rare phone call with my mother, I learned that my father dismissed news of my company's growth as smoke and mirrors. He says all startups inflate their numbers to attract investors, she explained apologetically. We have audited results from actual hospital implementations, I replied. This isn't speculation or projection. I know, dear, she sighed. He just can't see it. The truth I was coming to accept was that he would never see it, never acknowledge my success on my terms. The approval I had spent my life seeking was simply not available to me regardless of what I achieved. This realization painful as it was proved oddly liberating. If his validation was impossible to obtain, I could stop structuring my life around seeking it. I could build and grow and succeed for myself alone, not as a response to his dismissal but as an expression of my own vision. This mental shift coincided with the most intense period of my professional life. As Health Predict grew, so did the challenges of managing that growth. We moved to larger offices twice within 6 months. Our team expanded to over 100 employees. The technical complexity of our platform increased exponentially with each new feature and integration. Meanwhile, my MBA coursework demanded rigorous attention, particularly as we entered the specialized healthcare management modules that were most relevant to our business. I survived on 4 hours of sleep protein shakes consumed during meetings and the pure adrenaline of building something that was genuinely changing lives. The personal cost was significant. Friends stopped inviting me to events knowing I would cancel. Dating became non-existent. My apartment functioned as little more than a closet and shower facility. Even Lucy, my eternally supportive CTO, expressed concern. You're going to crash, she warned after finding me asleep at my desk for the 3rd time in a week. The company needs you functioning. She was right, of course. I began forcing myself to take 1 full day off each week, to sleep in my actual bed, to occasionally eat food that hadn't been delivered or microwaved. Small steps toward basic self-care that felt like radical indulgence in the context of our growth trajectory. As my final MBA semester approached, 2 significant developments occurred simultaneously. First, our latest clinical results were published in the New England Journal of Medicine, providing irrefutable validation of our technology's impact. Second, several major healthcare corporations expressed interest in either acquiring Health Predict or partnering for nationwide implementation. After careful consideration with our board, we made the decision that would change everything Health Predict would go public. The IPO would provide the capital needed for global expansion, while allowing early employees and investors to realize the value they had helped create. The timing aligned perfectly with my graduation. The symbolic symmetry appealed to me, finishing 1 chapter of personal growth as the company entered its next phase. We set the IPO date for the morning of my graduation ceremony, a private victory that only my closest colleagues understood. As we navigated the complex IPO preparation process working with investment banks and regulatory bodies, I maintained complete silence about the valuation projections that were beginning to circulate. Even as the numbers grew from optimistic to staggering, I kept them close, sharing only with our executive team and board. The night before graduation, as I reviewed my commencement outfit and packed the cap and gown, I sent a final text to my family inviting them once more to attend the ceremony. My mother responded immediately that she would try to be there. James said he would come if meetings allowed. My father and Michael did not respond at all. I went to sleep that night with mixed emotions. Pride in completing my MBA while growing Health Predict beyond my wildest dreams. Sadness that the achievement still felt incomplete without family recognition. And a small, stubborn flame of hope that tomorrow might finally bring the validation I had spent a lifetime seeking. The 18 months leading up to graduation day transformed Health Predict from promising startup to industry phenomenon. After securing our Series C funding, we moved from our modest offices to an entire floor in a gleaming downtown tower, complete with views that still made me catch my breath each morning. The contrast between our original pastrami-scented room and this glass and steel testament to success never failed to ground me in gratitude. Hiring Thomas as our CFO proved to be one of my most crucial decisions. At 52, with silver temples and impeccable credentials from major healthcare corporations, he brought the financial discipline and strategic thinking we needed to navigate rapid growth. More importantly, he believed in our mission with an intensity that matched my own. Most CFOs spend their careers moving money around to create an illusion of value, he told me during his interview. I want to spend mine creating actual value that happens to generate money. Under his guidance, we restructured our finances, implemented scalable systems, and prepared for the exponential growth we anticipated. His 20 years of experience helped us avoid pitfalls that trap many expanding companies, particularly around cash flow management and resource allocation. Our core product continued to evolve, becoming more sophisticated with each hospital implementation. The predictive algorithms improved as our dataset grew, identifying patient risk factors with increasing precision. We expanded beyond our original focus on cardiac care to develop specialized modules for oncology, neurology, and neonatal care. Each new module required intensive development and rigorous testing, stretching our engineering team to its limits. Lucy, my brilliant CTO, worked miracles, keeping the technical infrastructure stable while building new capabilities. There were nights when the entire development team worked until dawn, fueled by pizza and purpose debugging critical features before major client demonstrations. As our footprint expanded, competitors began to take notice. Two major healthcare technology companies attempted to replicate our predictive approach, leading to our first patent infringement battles. The legal fees were staggering, but the alternative, letting others copy what we had built through years of sacrifice, was unthinkable. They're targeting us because we're winning our lead counsel, explained during a tense board meeting. This is actually a positive indicator of your market position. It didn't feel positive when we were diverting resources to legal battles instead of product development, but we ultimately prevailed in both cases, strengthening our intellectual property protections and sending a clear message to the process market about our determination to defend our innovation. Media coverage increased exponentially, particularly after the Journal of the American Medical Association published a study confirming our platform's impact on patient outcomes. I found myself juggling interview requests with investor meetings and product demos, often changing from presentation attire to camera-ready clothing in airport bathrooms between flights. The growth brought immense pressure. Each new hospital implementation came with higher expectations and more critical scrutiny. When a system outage affected 12 client hospitals, simultaneously causing a 2-hour disruption in predictive alerts, I spent 48 consecutive hours personally calling each hospital administrator, working with our team to identify the root cause and implementing redundancy protocols to prevent future incidents. You can't be the personal failsafe forever, Thomas cautioned after that episode. We need systems that don't depend on your heroics. He was right, of course. The company had grown beyond the stage where individual effort, even from the founder, could solve systemic challenges. We invested heavily in process development training programs and management structures that would allow for sustainable scaling. The decision to pursue an IPO wasn't made lightly. We spent weeks analyzing alternatives, from remaining private with additional venture funding to strategic acquisition by larger healthcare entities. In the end, the public option offered the best combination of capital access for growth and independence to pursue our vision. Once the decision was made, the preparation process consumed every available resource. Investment banks scrutinized our financials, lawyers reviewed our contracts, and intellectual property and communications specialists crafted our market narrative. The standard 3 to 6 month IPO timeline compressed into an intense 12 weeks to align with my graduation date. The compressed schedule created nearly unbearable pressure. Days began with 5 a.m. calls to European investors and ended with midnight reviews of prospectus language. Sleep became a luxury rather than a necessity, snatched in 90-minute increments between critical decisions. The physical toll became increasingly evident. I developed stress-induced migraines that would leave me squinting at spreadsheets through pain. My normally healthy appetite disappeared, replaced by a constant knot of anxiety. Thomas insisted I see the company doctor after finding me pale and shaking following an all-night preparation session. Exhaustion and dehydration, the doctor diagnosed, administering IV fluids in our wellness room while I continued to take calls. If you were anyone else, I'd order hospital admission. If I were anyone else, I wouldn't have an IPO launching in 3 weeks, I replied, accepting the situation as the necessary cost of our ambitions. The final pre-IPO valuation discussions with underwriters produced numbers that seemed surreal. Their initial range already exceeded our most optimistic internal projections, but as roadshow presentations garnered enthusiastic investor response, the estimates climbed higher. "6 billion," Thomas whispered, showing me the underwriter's final pricing recommendation the week before launch. Conservative estimate. The figure felt abstract, disconnected from the company I had built from nothing. $6 billion. More money than I could conceptualize, transforming everyone with early equity from comfortable to wealthy, early investors from wealthy to extraordinarily so, and me, the founder, with the largest individual stake into something I had never aspired to be, a billionaire. We kept the final valuation projections strictly confidential, sharing them only with our board and executive team. Even as financial news outlets began speculating about one of the most anticipated healthcare IPOs of the year, we maintained discipline around official communications. The symbolic alignment of the IPO with graduation day wasn't coincidental. I had deliberately scheduled our public debut for the morning of commencement, seeing poetic justice in these twin culminations of my parallel journeys. The company I had built despite my father's dismissal would enter the public markets the same day I received the degree he had deemed unnecessary. As the date approached last minute, crises threatened to derail our carefully orchestrated timeline. A potential material issue with a key contract required emergency renegotiation. Questions from the SEC necessitated revisions to our prospectus. A technical issue with our trading ticker symbol needed urgent resolution. Through it all, our team demonstrated remarkable resilience. Problems that might have seemed insurmountable in our early days were now handled with practiced efficiency. We had grown not just in size but in capability, each challenge strengthening our collective resolve rather than weakening it. The night before the IPO and graduation, our executive team gathered for a quiet dinner in a private room at a restaurant near our offices. No press, no bankers, just the core group who had built something extraordinary together. "Whatever happens tomorrow, remember this moment," I told them, raising a glass to the table of tired, proud faces. "We've already succeeded by every measure that actually matters. The stock price is just a number." We all knew this wasn't entirely true. The IPO would determine not just our financial futures, but the resources available to realize our vision of transformed healthcare. But in that moment, acknowledging the human achievement beneath the business metrics felt essential. I returned to my apartment at 11, laying out my graduation regalia alongside the conservative blue dress I had chosen for the ceremony. After weeks of minimal sleep, I expected to collapse immediately, but found myself instead standing at my window looking out at the city lights, trying to process the magnitude of what awaited in the morning. Part of me still hoped for my family's presence, for my father to finally witness what I had built. The little girl seeking Daddy's approval had never fully disappeared, despite years of evidence that it might never come. I had invited them all, even including tickets to the IPO bell-ringing ceremony that would precede graduation. No confirmations had arrived, only my mother's non-committal. "We'll try," and James's conditional maybe. Yet I had reserved seats just in case, unwilling to surrender that final thread of hope. I finally fell asleep around 2 a.m., setting multiple alarms, though I knew adrenaline would wake me well before dawn. Tomorrow would change everything one way or another. The company would be public. I would be an MBA graduate. And perhaps, just perhaps, I would finally earn the recognition from my father that had eluded me for 29 years. Morning arrived with the soft ping of a text message rather than the blare of my alarm. It was Thomas, characteristically early and efficient, markets looking strong. Everyone in position. "Car will collect you at 7:30. I showered quickly, applied makeup with more care than usual, knowing photos from today would likely appear in business publications. The blue dress, conservative but confident, paired with subtle pearl earrings that had belonged to my grandmother. Professional but not flashy, successful but not ostentatious. As I prepared, memories of other milestone events flickered through my consciousness. High school graduation, where my parents had attended but left immediately after the ceremony, missing the celebration dinner with friends. College commencement, where they had arrived late and departed early, my father checking emails throughout my valedictorian speech. Each achievement somehow diminished by their minimal engagement, each success feeling incomplete without their recognition. Still, I found myself hoping. Perhaps today would be different. Perhaps the combination of the MBA from my father's alma mater and the company's public debut would finally be enough. I tucked my cap and gown into a garment bag, took one last look around my rarely used apartment, and headed downstairs where Thomas's arranged car waited. The morning unfolded in a carefully orchestrated sequence. First, the traditional bell-ringing ceremony at the exchange surrounded by our executive team board members and key investors. Diana, my first believer, stood proudly at my side as we counted down to the market open. The moment felt surreal, flashbulbs popping as our company ticker symbol illuminated the board for the first time. We had no time to watch the initial trading rushing from the exchange to the university where graduates were already assembling. Thomas promised to monitor the market opening and keep me informed of significant developments, allowing me to focus on the graduation ceremony. The commencement hall buzzed with excitement as families found seats and graduates adjusted caps and tassels. I scanned the filling auditorium, searching for familiar faces in the crowd. The seats I had reserved remained empty, though the ceremony wouldn't begin for another 30 minutes. There was still time. I took my place with my cohort, exchanging congratulations with classmates who had become friends and allies during our intense program. Many knew about the IPO, offering additional congratulations on my busy day. Others had no idea about my other life, as a CEO, having known me only as a dedicated student who somehow always had urgent calls to take between classes. As the graduates settled and the hall filled to capacity, I continued to glance toward the entrance and those empty seats. The ceremony would begin in 5 minutes, 4 minutes, 3. Then my phone vibrated in my pocket, a text message. My heart leapt, expecting coordination details from my family about their arrival. Instead, my father's name appeared on the screen, with words that, despite years of similar treatment, still had the power to wound. Don't expect help, you're on your own. No congratulations, no explanation for their absence, not even the courtesy of a direct decline. Just a final reminder of his fundamental position: I was not worthy of support. The bubble of hope I had maintained, despite all evidence, burst instantly. I fought back tears as our row was instructed to stand, preparing to walk across the stage. Years of hiding emotions in business meetings served me well as I forced my face into a neutral expression. I would not let him ruin this moment. I would not give him that power. The graduation processional began, our cohort moving forward row by row. I heard names called, saw classmates stride confidently across the stage to receive their diplomas, registering these details through a fog of hurt and anger. When my own name echoed through the hall, I summoned every ounce of poise I possessed, walking steadily to accept the degree I had earned despite everything. The dean's handshake, the official photographer's brief direction, to smile, the weight of the diploma case in my hand, all these registered dimly through my emotional turmoil. I returned to my seat, accepting quiet congratulations from those around me while feeling strangely hollow inside. Then my phone vibrated again. Another message to twist the knife. I considered ignoring it, but years of business instinct made me check discreetly. Thomas's name appeared on the screen with an urgent message: need to speak immediately. Critical update. My stomach dropped. Had something gone wrong with the IPO? Was our careful planning collapsing at the final hurdle? I signaled to a ceremony coordinator that I needed to step out, receiving a disapproving look but an eventual nod toward a side exit. In the quiet of the hallway, I called Thomas immediately. What's happened? I asked without preamble. Angelica. His voice contained an unusual element I couldn't immediately identify. Not panic, not concern, but something intense. It's happening. We opened at $120 per share. The IPO hit $6 billion. The words didn't register immediately, their magnitude too great to process. $6 billion, I repeated numbly. $6 billion valuation at opening, he confirmed. Trading is already up 12%. The market is responding even better than our highest projections. Angelica, do you understand what this means? I leaned against the wall, suddenly lightheaded. It means we were right. It means you were right, Thomas corrected. And it means, based on your equity position, that you're now personally worth over $1 billion. You're a billionaire, Angelica. The contrast between my father's dismissive text and this reality was so stark it was almost comical. In the span of 15 minutes, I had received the cruelest reminder of his lack of faith and the most dramatic possible validation that he had been wrong all along. The Wall Street Journal is requesting an immediate statement, Thomas continued. Bloomberg wants you on air tomorrow. The press release is ready, but they're asking for personal quotes. The graduation ceremony continued inside, oblivious to the seismic shift in my reality. I could hear applause as another group of graduates received their degrees. I need to finish the ceremony, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. Hold the press until I'm done. But Thomas, leak the valuation. Make sure it's public immediately. Are you sure? We discussed waiting until the closing bell for official statements. I'm sure, I replied, a plan forming rapidly. Make it known. Now. I returned to my seat just as the dean was preparing to make special recognition announcements. As I settled in, a ripple of activity caught my attention at the back of the auditorium. People checking phones, whispering to neighbors, some looking in my direction with new interest. The news was spreading. Financial alerts on phones, text messages from those watching business channels. The murmur grew, reaching the faculty seating area where professors from the business school began conferring urgently. The dean paused, receiving a hastily delivered note from an assistant. He adjusted his glasses, reading quickly, then looked out into the audience with a smile. Ladies and gentlemen, before we continue, I've just received news that I believe deserves special acknowledgement. One of today's graduates, Angelica Warren, is the founder and CEO of Health Predict, which completed its initial public offering this morning at a valuation of $6 billion. The hall erupted in surprised applause and exclamations. This represents one of the most successful healthcare technology IPOs in recent history, the dean continued, and exemplifies the innovative spirit and entrepreneurial excellence we strive to foster. Angelica, would you please stand and be recognized? I rose on shaky legs, turning to face the audience that had exploded into enthusiastic applause. Classmates patted my back and shoulders in congratulation. Faculty members nodded in approval, and hundreds of faces looked at me with newfound respect and awe. As the applause continued, I allowed my gaze to drift toward the back of the auditorium where movement near the entrance caught my attention. 4 people had slipped in late and were standing awkwardly near the doors, clearly having arrived after the ceremony began. My father, mother, and both brothers dressed formally but looking distinctly uncomfortable as all nearby attention focused on them as well, the family connection quickly established by proximity seekers. Our eyes met across the distance, my father's expression, a complex mixture of shock, disbelief, and something I had never seen directed at me before, respect tinged with the beginning of regret. I held his gaze for one long moment as the applause continued around me, neither smiling nor glaring, simply allowing him to see me clearly for perhaps the first time, not as his little girl with unrealistic dreams, but as a woman who had built something extraordinary through sheer determination and vision. Then I turned away, accepting the congratulations of my peers and professors, no longer defined by his approval or its absence. The validation I had spent a lifetime seeking had arrived, but from the world rather than from him. And somehow that felt exactly right. After the ceremony concluded, graduates and families poured onto the lawn outside the auditorium, creating a kaleidoscope of black robes, colorful hoods, and proud embraces. I found myself surrounded by classmates and professors offering congratulations on both the degree and the spectacular IPO timing, many laughing about my modest omission of being a CEO during class discussions. Now I understand why you were always stepping out to take calls, my corporate finance professor joked. I thought you were just avoiding my questions about leveraged buyouts. I was responding to his good-natured ribbing when I spotted them approaching through the crowd, my family moving hesitantly as if navigating unfamiliar territory. In many ways, they were. This world of academic achievement combined with entrepreneurial success represented everything my father had insisted was beyond my capabilities. My mother reached me first, pulling me into an awkward hug. Congratulations, darling. We're so sorry we were late. Traffic was terrible. Her eyes conveyed a deeper message, a silent plea to make this interaction easier for everyone. My brothers followed with stilted congratulations. Michael, always my father's son, managed a tight smile. Quite a day for you. The graduation and the company thing. James, who had shown glimmers of genuine support over the years, seemed more sincerely pleased. This is incredible, Angie. I always said you were the smart one. Then my father stepped forward, looking uncharacteristically uncertain. Richard Warren, who entered every room with the confidence of someone who owned it, now stood before me with the air of a man who had severely miscalculated. Angelica, he cleared his throat. Congratulations on your graduation. Not a word about the company. Not a mention of the IPO that was at this very moment making headlines across financial news outlets. Just an acknowledgement of the lesser achievement, the one that fit within his narrow view of appropriate accomplishments. Thank you, I replied, keeping my voice neutral. I'm surprised you made it given your message this morning. He had the grace to look uncomfortable. That was. I didn't mean. Whatever excuse he was formulating was interrupted by a series of notification sounds from phones throughout the crowd. A collective cascade of alerts, causing people to reach for devices simultaneously. I knew what it was before anyone said a word. The market had closed and the final numbers for Health Predict's first trading day were being reported. My own phone buzzed with Thomas's update. Closed at $145 per share. Final day one valuation, $7.2 billion. You did it. As people around us read their screens, a new wave of murmurs spread through the crowd. Nearby graduates and parents looked up from phones to stare in my direction, the news clearly mentioning me by name. A Financial Journal headline flashed on a phone near enough for me to read, Health Predict soars in debut founder becomes youngest female tech billionaire. My family saw the reaction's confusion crossing their faces until Michael, always quick with financial news, checked his own phone. His eyes widened as he read, then wordlessly showed the screen to my father. I watched my father's expression transform as he absorbed the information. The color drained from his face, followed by a flush that rose from his collar to his hairline. His mouth opened slightly, then closed, then opened again as he struggled to formulate a response to news that contradicted every dismissive judgment he had ever made about me. Angelica, he finally managed, his voice strained with effort. I had no idea the company had progressed to this stage. Why didn't you tell us? The audacity of the question almost made me laugh. Years of dismissal, of belittling my work, of refusing even modest support or acknowledgement, and now he wondered why I hadn't shared my triumphs. I invited you to every major milestone, I replied evenly. You chose not to participate. But this, he gestured vaguely, seemingly unable to articulate the scale of what had occurred. This is extraordinary. If I had known. If you had known it would be successful, you would have supported it, I finished for him. That's not how belief works, Dad. Before he could respond, we were interrupted by a swarm of well-wishers. Classmates, professors, even the dean himself came to offer congratulations and, in some cases, business cards. The irony wasn't lost on me that after years of struggling for acknowledgement, I now had to navigate excessive attention. Through the crowd, I spotted Diana making her way toward us, elegant and purposeful as always. She embraced me warmly before turning a cool, appraising gaze on my family. You must be the Warrens, she said, extending her hand to my father. I'm Diana Reynolds, Health Predict's first investor and board member. I've heard so much about you. The careful neutrality of her tone didn't disguise the subtext. She knew exactly how they had treated me, and her politeness was for my benefit, not theirs. My father shook her hand visibly, trying to regain his usual commanding presence. Richard Warren. I've always supported Angelica's endeavors. Diana's slight raise of an eyebrow conveyed eloquent disbelief, but she merely smiled. How fortunate she is to have such support. A young woman from the university press office approached apologetically, interrupting. Miss Warren, we have several media requests for statements or brief interviews. The Wall Street Journal and CNBC are particularly persistent. I'll be available in 20 minutes, I told her, making a decision. Please coordinate with Thomas Jackson, my CFO. He's expecting your call. As the press representative departed, my father attempted to reassert himself into the conversation. Angelica, we should discuss this development as a family. Perhaps dinner tonight. I have some thoughts on wealth management and public relations that might benefit you. The presumption that he would now step in as advisor after years of dismissal was so predictable. I had anticipated it almost word for word. Richard Warren, unable to acknowledge his error directly, would instead try to position himself as the wise guide I suddenly needed. I appreciate the offer, I said carefully, but I have a celebration dinner with my executive team and board tonight. They've earned this moment. We all have. But surely family takes precedence, he insisted, showing the first hints of the authoritative manner I knew so well. Not today, I replied simply. Maybe not for a while. Michael stepped forward, suddenly solicitous. Angie, be reasonable. The family has connections and experience that could be valuable to you now. Dad's only trying to help. James, to his credit, placed a restraining hand on Michael's arm. Not now, Mike. My mother, who had remained characteristically quiet, surprised me by speaking up. Angelica has clearly managed beautifully without our input. Perhaps we should listen rather than advise. My father shot her a look of betrayal, unused to any contradiction from that quarter. Before he could respond, my phone signaled an incoming call from Thomas. I need to take this, I said, stepping slightly away from the family circle. Thomas was characteristically brief. CNBC wants you live in 15 minutes. Cars waiting at the south entrance. I'll be right there, I confirmed, ending the call and turning back to my family. I have to go, I told them. Media commitments. My father seemed to struggle between pride that his daughter was suddenly media-worthy and frustration at his loss of control over the situation. We'll come with you, he decided. Family support for the cameras. The suggestion that they would now play the role of proud, supportive family for public consumption when they had been anything but in private crystallized something for me. This moment of success was not about vindicating myself to them or finally earning their approval. It was about recognizing that I had never needed it in the first place. That won't be necessary, I said firmly. This isn't about family today. It's about the company and the team that built it. Angelica, my father began, his tone holding the warning note I recognized from childhood disagreements. No, I interrupted, surprising myself with my calm certainty. For years, I wanted nothing more than your approval. I worked myself to exhaustion trying to earn it. Today, I realized something important. I don't need it anymore. My mother's eyes filled with tears, though whether from sadness at my words or pride in my stance, I couldn't tell. James nodded slightly, a gesture of understanding and perhaps respect. Michael looked uncomfortable while my father's expression hardened into the dismissive mask I knew so well. Success has gone to your head already, he said coldly. Don't forget where you came from. I never could, I replied. It's what drove me to get where I am. Diana, who had tactfully stepped away during our exchange, returned to my side. Your car is waiting, Angelica, and the team is gathered to celebrate with you. I nodded gratefully, then turned back to my family. I'm not cutting you out, I said, softening slightly. But any relationship we have moving forward needs to be built on respect, not obligation. I hope we can find that eventually. Without waiting for a response, I turned and walked away with Diana, heading toward the waiting car and the team that had believed in me when my own family wouldn't. The vindication I felt wasn't in proving my father wrong, though that satisfaction was undeniable. The true victory was in finally freeing myself from the need for his approval. As Diana and I walked across the campus, she squeezed my arm gently. You know what the best revenge is, she asked. Living well, I suggested. She shook her head. Building something that matters, which is exactly what you've done. The simplicity and truth of her statement washed over me, replacing the complicated emotions of the family confrontation with clarity and purpose. Today wasn't about my father's reaction or my family's belated recognition. It was about the journey from that first dismissed idea to a company valued at over $7 billion, a company that was already improving healthcare outcomes across the country. That evening, surrounded by the team that had built Health Predict from nothing, I finally celebrated properly, without the shadow of familial disappointment darkening the moment. We toasted each milestone, each setback, overcome each small victory that had led to this enormous one. And if I checked my phone, occasionally finding no messages from my family, the absence no longer held the power to diminish my achievement. Some bridges might be rebuilt in time, others might remain broken. Either way, I would continue forward on the path I had created for myself. 6 months after graduation day, I stood at the window of my new office, watching autumn leaves scatter across the corporate campus of Health Predict's headquarters. At $7.8 billion market capitalization and growing, we had expanded into a space that reflected both our success and our vision, a former hospital renovated into state-of-the-art offices with research facilities, and collaborative spaces designed to foster innovation. The changes in my professional life were dramatic but manageable. I had expected the challenges of running a public company to be primarily financial and operational. What surprised me was how well our team adapted to the heightened scrutiny and expectations. The foundation we had built during those early struggle years proved remarkably solid. The personal changes were more complex. Sudden wealth alters not just circumstances but relationships, assumptions, and even identity. I made a conscious decision early to approach this new reality with deliberate thoughtfulness rather than either extravagance or asceticism. My first major financial decision was creating the Future Health Foundation endowed with 20% of my IPO proceeds. The foundation focused on two primary initiatives supporting young women in technology and healthcare fields and funding innovative healthcare solutions for underserved communities. These weren't random choices but direct responses to the barriers I had faced and the needs I had observed. The scholarship program specifically designed for students whose families didn't support their educational choices became my personal priority. Each recipient received not just financial aid but mentorship and internship opportunities. Watching these young people pursue their passions without the financial strain I had experienced brought a fulfillment that no luxury purchase could match. My relationship with my family evolved in unexpected ways. After graduation day, we entered a period of awkward distance broken by occasional stilted phone calls and text messages. My father predictably made several attempts to insert himself into my business decisions, offering unsolicited advice on everything from investment strategies to media appearances. "You need to diversify immediately," he insisted during one of our infrequent conversations. "I know several excellent wealth managers who could help you avoid the typical nouveau rich mistakes." The condescension was so familiar it almost made me laugh. Even in the face of extraordinary success, he could not help but position himself as the authority and me as the novice needing guidance. I thanked him politely for his concern, but explained that my financial team had matters well in hand. My mother began reaching out more frequently initially with careful pleasantries, eventually with more genuine connection. During a rare lunch together, she confessed what I had always suspected. "I should have stood up for you," she admitted, her hands trembling slightly around her teacup. "All those years, I knew how wrong he was about you. I just didn't have the courage to say it." "Why now?" I asked. Her smile held decades of resignation. "Because now he knows he was wrong. And because I'm tired of being silent when I'm proud of you. I always have been, Angelica. Always." These small steps toward authenticity created space for a limited but more honest relationship between us. She would never be the fiercely supportive mother I had longed for as a child, but she was becoming someone I could at least know as an adult. My brothers followed divergent paths. Michael, after several awkward attempts to leverage our connection for business opportunities, eventually retreated to his familiar orbit around our father. James, however, made genuine efforts to rebuild our relationship, acknowledging his past failures of support with surprising humility. "I knew Dad was wrong about you," he confessed during a frank conversation. "I just took the easier path of agreeing with him. It was cowardly." His honesty made room for forgiveness, and over time we developed the sibling relationship we had never had growing up. He became one of the few family members I could speak with openly about both business challenges and personal growth. My father remained the most complicated case. Unable to admit his fundamental misjudgment directly, he instead attempted to rewrite history, speaking about my success to others as if he had been my most ardent supporter all along. I always knew she had something special. I overheard him telling a business associate at a charity event. Encouraged her independent spirit from the beginning. The breathtaking revisionism would once have infuriated me. Now it simply clarified what therapy had been helping me. Understand his inability to acknowledge being wrong was his limitation, not mine. I no longer needed his version of events to align with reality in order to know my own truth. Therapy had been another deliberate choice after the IPO. Success hadn't healed the wounds of years of dismissal and conditional love. If anything, it had highlighted them in stark relief. Weekly sessions with Dr. Patricia Lindholm helped me process not just family dynamics, but the psychological whiplash of going from struggling entrepreneur to public figure virtually overnight. The validation you sought from your father has come from the world instead, she observed during one particularly insightful session. The question now is whether external validation is enough, or if you're ready to develop internal validation that requires no outside confirmation. That question became central to my ongoing personal development. Learning to measure my worth by my own standards rather than either my father's approval or the market's valuation was perhaps the most challenging growth of all. The professional world offered its own complex lessons. As a young female billionaire in the male-dominated realms of tech and healthcare, I encountered everything from patronizing advice to romantic pursuits, clearly motivated by my new financial status. Navigating this terrain required developing clear boundaries and an almost preternatural ability to discern authentic interactions from opportunistic ones. Diana remained my most trusted advisor through these transitions. Having experienced her own version of sudden success decades earlier, she provided perspective that proved invaluable. "The money magnifies who you already are," she told me over dinner one evening. "It doesn't change your core, it just removes constraints. The people who were kind before stay kind. The ones who were users just have more to use for." Her wisdom helped me avoid both paranoia and naivete as I built a new life that honored both where I had come from and where I was going. Public speaking became an unexpected passion. What began as obligatory appearances at industry conferences evolved into opportunities to share lessons about resilience, innovation, and authentic leadership. My keynote address at the Women in Technology Summit, titled "Building Without Permission," became something of a viral sensation, particularly among young women facing similar barriers. "The most valuable skill I developed wasn't coding or business strategy," I told the audience of 3,000. "It was the ability to believe in my vision when no one else did, especially those whose approval I most wanted." The framed text message from my father now hung in my office, not as a bitter reminder, but as a powerful symbol of transformation. "Don't expect help, you're on your own." Words intended to diminish had instead become a mantra of independence and self-reliance that resonated with many who heard my story. My personal life, long sacrificed on the altar of professional ambition, gradually rebalanced. I developed friendships based on shared interests rather than shared struggles, finding particular connection with other entrepreneurs who understood the unique challenges of building something from nothing. Romance proved more complicated. Early post-IPO dating experiences taught me the hazards of wealth in relationship formation. Men were either intimidated, opportunistic, or fetishistic about my success. Eventually, I met Daniel, a pediatric surgeon whose dedication to his own calling meant he neither needed nor resented my achievements. Our relationship developed slowly, built on mutual respect and genuine interest, rather than wealth or status considerations. As the 6-month mark since graduation approached, Health Predict continued its growth trajectory. Our technology now operated in over 200 hospitals nationwide, with international expansion underway. Clinical results consistently validated our approach with measurable improvements in patient outcomes and significant cost reductions for healthcare systems. The mission that had driven me through years of doubt and dismissal was now benefiting patients daily. This, more than the financial success or public recognition, provided the deepest satisfaction. We were quite literally saving lives through technology that might never have existed had I followed the path my father prescribed. For a televised interview marking our 6th month as a public company, I returned to the Harvard campus, where everything had culminated that graduation day. As the camera crew set up near the business school, I took a moment alone to reflect on the journey that had brought me full circle to this place. The greatest lesson wasn't about proving others wrong, though there was undeniable satisfaction in that. It wasn't even about business success or financial security. The true lesson was about the freedom that comes from living authentically, despite external expectations or limitations. My father had been right about one thing, though not in the way he intended. I was on my own. Not in the abandoned, unsupported sense he had meant, but in the liberating reality that I was the author of my own story, the architect of my own success, and increasingly the source of my own validation. As I prepared to address the camera and the millions who would watch the interview, I thought about all the viewers who might see themselves in different parts of my story, those with unsupportive families, those with dreams, others dismissed, those at the beginning of journeys, others deemed impossible. I wanted them to understand what I had learned through struggle and success alike, that the obstacles often become the way forward, that rejection can fuel determination, and that the opinions least worth internalizing are often those from the people whose approval we most desperately seek. The red light on the camera illuminated, and I began sharing not just the business success story the network expected, but the human journey behind it. The authentic path that had led from dismissal to determination, from exclusion to creation, from seeking external validation to finding internal peace. Have you ever had someone tell you that you couldn't do something only to prove them completely wrong? Share your story in the comments below. I read every comment and draw strength from this community of resilient souls. If this story resonated with you, please subscribe and hit that like button. And remember, sometimes the most powerful words you can hear are "you're on your own," because that's when you truly discover what you're capable of building. Thank you for listening to my story, and I wish you the courage to pursue your dreams, especially when others tell you they're impossible.